When it comes to NFL content here on YouTube, draft grades are far from a unique concept, right? I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here with this series. We pretty much know what it's going to be. But that being said, typically when you see these videos, you get one of four flavors. You'll get somebody who will just talk about the things they liked about the draft, talk about their favorite draft classes. Maybe they'll throw in their least favorite draft classes, but they won't cover the draft in its entirety. Or you'll have somebody who will go division by division, make 8 videos talking about every single NFL division and what those teams in those different divisions did during the draft. You might have somebody who focuses on one specific team. Maybe they have a channel dedicated to that team and they only talk about the picks that that team made. Or you might have somebody who just throws it all in one video, talks for an hour, hour and a half, and that's how they cover the draft in its entirety. And all of that is fine and dandy. No hate to anyone who takes that approach with this content. But for me personally, I kind of hate myself. And also, I'm really disappointed in the pre-draft content I made. I didn't make nearly as much as I wanted to. So to kind of punish myself and also to try to stand out a little bit, we are going to be talking about all 32 teams in depth in 32 different videos. The original plan was to do that throughout the month of May. Obviously, we're in June now. I missed that deadline. So hopefully we'll be able to get it done by June. And if I can't get it done by the end of June, then we'll make another little intro video and I'll talk about how we're going to do it through May, June, and July. We'll just have to see how our schedule shakes out. So before we jump into it, I would like to give a quick disclaimer because this is the #1 type of comment I get on these videos. I would like to point out, I don't think I'm better than any NFL GMs out there. I am an amateur. I am somebody who has a little bit of free time and spends that free time studying the game and scouting college players. I'm not a professional. If you think your favorite GM knows more about football than I do, you're probably right and I won't fault you for that. I'm not trying to say that I know more than any of these GMs I'm critiquing. I'm simply providing analysis based off of my analysis of different draft prospects and also talking about maybe what I would have done differently if I was in their shoes. It's a fun exercise. It's a great way to talk about some guys that I probably wouldn't have talked about otherwise. And if you think this is me trying to say I'm better than X GM, you are absolutely wrong. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the Miami Dolphins and what they did during the 2024 NFL Draft. The Dolphins draft was really weird for me because I don't see their vision at all. You know, you can look at the grades I have here right away. I liked a lot of what they did on day 3. You know, they got some really good value picks, drafted some players I was a big fan of. But even then, those players aren't going to start day 1, and 2 of those players probably won't start for this team at any point, period, at least not within the next year or 2. And even then, knowing how this team operates, they'll probably bring in more talent at the position they're at just to kind of stunt that ability for them to start. They drafted another running back. They drafted an offensive tackle they don't really need. They drafted a rotational player in the first round. And you're looking at this and you're telling me they didn't think to take an interior offensive lineman at any point in this class? And this was an incredible interior offensive line class. They didn't think to take an interior defensive lineman at any point in this class. This was a really nice interior defensive line class. Those are 2 positions they need very badly. You know, they lost Christian Wilkins in free agency. They lost Connor Williams, who technically is still out there, but we don't know what he's going to look like when he comes back from his injury. There's a reason he's still in the market despite being one of the most talented centers in the sport. They didn't bring back Robert Hunt. They lost him to the Panthers. So now you're looking at this interior offensive and interior defensive line. They have holes. They don't have a lot of talent. And instead, we're bulking up on running back depth when you're already 3 deep. We're bulking up on edge rushers when you're already 3 deep. We're double dipping on edge rushers, in fact. You're bulking up and double dipping on wide receivers when you're already arguably 4 or 5, maybe 6 deep. Like, what are we doing? I just don't get it. And that unfortunately does start with Chop Robinson, their first round pick, the edge rusher out of Penn State. And look, I like Chop Robinson as a player. I think he's really fun. I think he's going to be very good in specific situations. But at the end of the day, you're taking what is probably a rotational pass rusher. 6'3", 254 pounds, not very long, 32.5-inch arms. He is going to be a designated pass rusher. Now, he's going to be very, very good at that because he has, no pun intended here, very good pass rushing chops.
But as the 21st pick with, you had Jackson Powers Johnson still on the board, who many people, including myself, thought was a top 20 player in this class. He ended up falling because of an injury. Graham Barton still on the board, but instead you sit at 21 and you take a rotational pass rusher. And to a certain degree, I get it. You're worried about what's happening with Jalen Phillips and with Bradley Chubb. So why are we going with someone like Chop? Why not go after one of the other edge rushers in this class that, can be a little bit more than what Chop is? Like, you were clearly comfortable with waiting on taking another edge rusher until the 5th round in Mo Kamara, and we'll talk about him. Why not do that to begin with? Why not take an interior offensive lineman here in the first? Why not take a guard here in the first? An interior offensive lineman. Why not take an interior defensive lineman? Trade back and take one. You had options, and instead you go with the designated pass rusher. Hell, I wouldn't have even been mad if they went wide receiver here. Really bulk up that receiver core, gave them some insurance for Jalen Waddle, who obviously they already paid, but at the time, his future was kind of up in the air. I just don't get it. I don't get why this was the pick. Now, again, I do like Chop. I think he's going to be a very, very good designated pass rusher. He's got a great first step, really good lateral quickness, really twitchy, really good bend, really good ankle flexion, really good angle awareness, can stop and start on a dime. He can convert speed into power. He's got a decent enough bag. He can make some splash plays in the run game, but you're not going to expect him to be a consistent run defender by any means. Doesn't have a lot of anchor. Plays with a hot motor. He can drop into coverage a little bit, but again, he's small. He doesn't have a lot of length. He's not going to generate a ton of power because of that lack of length. His anchor isn't great. He's going to struggle against bigger tackles. He has some moments of stiffness. His hand placement isn't consistent. He's not even the perfect pass rusher to be like, oh, okay, they're just really worried about their pass rush here. I don't get it. This is, and I'm being slightly hyperbolic, but maybe there's some truth to it. This really does just feel like they're overcommitting to the bit. They're overcommitting to we want the fastest team on the field at all times. Because Chop is a really fast edge rusher. I don't know. Like I said, probably being a little bit overdramatic there, but it does feel that way to a certain extent. So taking Chop here at 21, I don't get. I simply do not understand it. I much rather would have seen them take an interior offensive lineman here, or even one of the interior defensive linemen. Maybe even consider offensive tackle in the first round if you're really that worried about your offensive tackles. Specifically, you've got Teron Armstead, who is old and can't exactly stay healthy. So I get wanting to address the position. But if you're going to do it, you should have done it here. Because you wait until the 2nd round to take Patrick Paul. And I don't love this pick much at all. If it wasn't for me understanding their point of view and wanting an offensive tackle, this would be graded a lot lower. I had a 3rd round grade on Patrick Paul. He was my OT 11. And you draft him over guys that I thought were better in Blake Fisher, Kingsley Suamataia. Those two guys, not only do I think they're better, I think they have guard flexibility. Patrick Paul has no guard flexibility. He is way too big to kick inside. Suamataia, I think you can get away with kicking inside. Blake Fisher, I think, can absolutely play inside. If you wanted to go the rotational aspect, you could have went with not a rotational aspect, excuse me. The ability to kick them inside, you could have went with Karan Amagaji. You had options here that would fit better with what you need. And instead, you just take a big ol' run block and right tackle a la Morgan Moses. And you look at what the Dolphins have at tackle. Like I said, you have Teron Armstead, who is good when healthy. The health is an issue. I understand it. You also have Austin Jackson, who I personally think Paul projects better as a right tackle. Austin Jackson's kind of holding that down for you. So I don't necessarily see the vision here. Now, looking at what Paul does well, like I said, he's got the size, he's got the height, he's got the length, he's got great wingspan. He's a very good athlete relative to his size. You're not going to confuse him for, a Joe Alt, an Olufashanu, a Troy Fotanu. He's a former boxer, which shows in his strikes and his ability to move his hands quickly and independently in pass pro. Great awareness against blitzes and stunts. He's going to be hard to work around just because of his overall size. Good anchor, despite lapses in technique. Just when you're as big and as strong as he is, it's hard to displace you now. He does need to work on the technique. He's a people mover in the run game, plays with a nasty demeanor, 44 career starts. It's just, when it comes to true speed, he's a little slow. I'd say below average. He can be slow off the snap at times, isn't the best at timing that. His technique isn't great, and he's a pretty underdeveloped run blocker given the pass-first offense he played in at Houston. But, you know, like I said, when he was run blocking, he did show some flashes of intensity and tenacity. So, I don't know. Maybe I can be proven wrong here. Maybe Patrick Paul can come out and blow my mind, but I don't see the vision with him. I thought there were better tackles on the board. I thought there were better project tackles on the board, especially if you want a guy who, you know, is going to be able to play inside and outside. You know, start their career on the inside, kick outside when Teron Armstead ends up leaving. In fact, I thought Karan Amagaji would have been perfect for that. Now, as a Bears fan, I'm glad you guys ended up skipping out on him because he's with my Bears now. But he reminds me a lot of Teron Armstead. He's built almost exactly like Teron Armstead. My comp for him was a raw Teron Armstead. How perfect would it have been if he was playing guard for Miami this year and then takes over for Armstead to tackle? But I digress. You know, don't love those first two picks. And then in the fourth round, I downright hate this Jalen Warren pick. If it wasn't for the fact that Raheem Mostert's in his 30s, this would be a straight up F for me. Like, I get worrying about the running back position when Mostert's 30, when Devon A-Chain's coming off an injury, you want to keep your guys healthy. But listen, running backs are a dime a dozen nowadays. This running back class was not one that was super impressive to me. It wasn't one that I loved. I had a couple guys that I liked, but you look at Jalen Wright, he was the 5th running back off the board. I liked Bucky Irving more than him. I liked Will Shipley more than him. I liked Braylon Allen a hell of a lot more than him. He goes 14 picks later. I was going to say a round later. I was a little bit off there. I liked Audric Estime more than him. I liked, I know there's a couple more here. Kamon Vidal better than him. I really like Dylan Laube. I liked him more than Wright. I just don't see the vision with this guy other than the fact that he go fast. That is the only reason why Jalen Wright is a Miami Dolphin, because he go fast. Newsflash, there's a lot of running backs that go fast. You don't have to spend a 4th round pick on a running back when you already have one of the best running back tandems in the sport just to get another running back that go fast. I'll guarantee you there is a running back out there in free agency that go fast, that you could go sign and make your RB3. I'll guarantee you could have waited until the end of the draft or waited until free agents or UDFA and grabbed a running back that go fast instead of just taking one here in the 4th round, wasting a pick on a running back that can't see the field, and skipping out on, again, interior offensive line depth. I mean, looking at some of the interior offensive linemen that went here in the 4th round after pick 120, you've got Mason McCormick went one pick before. You could have traded up and grabbed him. Trevor Keegan goes in the 5th round. Satoa Lamea, who went to the Seahawks, goes in the 6th round. I liked him. Christian Mahogany goes in the 6th round. That could have been a huge steal here in the 4th round, let alone in the 6th round. You look at some of the centers. Those were just the guards. You look at some of the centers here, scrolling up a little bit on the page I'm looking at here. You had Cedric Van Pran goes in the 5th round. You had Hunter Norzad goes in the 5th round. You had Jacob Monk out of Duke, who was okay enough. I wouldn't have taken him. You have Dylan McMahon, who goes in the 6th round. Good developmental center. You had Bo Limmer, who goes in the 6th round. You had Nick Samick, who goes in the 7th round. You have Michael Juergens, who goes in the 7th round. You have Matt Lee, who goes in the 7th round. Those are all centers that could be maybe not day one starters. I would say Cedric Van Pran would definitely be a day one starter. Norzad and Limmer, I think, could have competed to be a day one starter. But the other guys, they're developmental centers that can take over, maybe play a little bit of guard. Look at some of the guards. Christian Mahogany would start day one on this football team. And instead of going with one of those guys, you go with another running back, like I've been saying. I don't understand it. Not only were there better running backs on the board, there were bigger positions of need on the board. In fact, you know what? Let's look at defensive tackles too, for the hell of it. So after pick 120, you know what? Okay,
I'll give them a pass. By 120, a lot of the defensive tackles I liked were off the board. Christian Boyd was still there out of Northern Iowa, but I wouldn't have taken him in the 4th round anyway, so I'm not going to fault them there. Point is, though, you could have taken a defensive tackle earlier. You could have easily taken an interior offensive lineman here, grabbed a guy that has starting potential. I don't get it. I really, really don't get it. However, with all fairness to Jalen Wright, he's fun. You know, he's a fun back. He'll fit right in the whole, you know, track team backfield they want. Great speed in the open field, instant accelerator. He has a great jump cut, plays with low pad level that allows him to play through contact a little bit. Decent enough contact balance. Shows pass catching upside. He's pretty elusive. He's young. Should be good in this like zone system they run. But he doesn't have good vision. Doesn't create a lot after first contact. He had 4 fumbles in 2022. A little bit better in 2023, but still notable. Not great running the ball in between the tackles because of his lack of vision. He's going to hesitate there. And he is high-hipped. So unless he's using that jump cut, changing directions is going to be a struggle. So I don't understand. I really don't know why this was the pick. I don't know whose idea this was. And again, if it wasn't for the fact that Raheem Mostert is 31, and I can understand maybe panicking a little bit, being like, okay, we got to make sure we get our fast running back. I don't see it. And even then, if you wanted like a true Raheem Mostert replacement, Isaac Guerrero would have been a better pick. And I will say, I do think he ended up going before Jalen Wright. I'm going to double check myself on that. Did he go? No, he didn't. He was still available 9 picks later to the 49ers. That would have been an awesome pick. Shanahan picked the running back you definitely should have picked. And even then, there were better backs on the board. You know, I know I said Braylon Allen. He was my RB1. Same thing with Estime. Maybe you don't want a power back in your backfield, which, for the record, you should want. You should want somebody that is a bit of a change of pace guy and can be like a goal line back and smash through the line of scrimmage instead of just being fast. You don't have that on this football team. The closest thing you have to that at the halfback position is Jeff Wilson Jr. Outside of that, you have Alec Ingold, and I love Alec Ingold. Second best fullback in the sport. They don't run that boy. They do not do it. He does not get the ball handed to him. So you're not going to get him on the goal line. Instead, you're going to get some bullshit with Jalen Wright probably, because I think he would be the heaviest back in this backfield. And that's not ideal. So I really don't like that pick. But then we get to the 5th round, and I will sing their praises for landing Mo Camara, the edge rusher out of Colorado State. He's somebody that I liked quite a bit as a rotational edge rusher. I had a late 3rd round grade on him. You get him in the 5th. This is where you take rotational edges. This is where you take guys that are not going to play every down at edge. Not in the 1st round, not at the 21st pick, here in the 5th round. This is great value. This is a good pick. Guy that has a really good build, really good balance, pretty good bend, great first step. He has a stocky frame with like a shorter stature, which is going to allow him to work under and around blockers. He's able to turn the quarter pretty quickly and close in on the pocket. He has like a Khalil Mack-esque knack for getting to the quarterback and kind of knocking the ball out of his hands. God, try trying to say Khalil Mack-esque knack 5 times fast. That's a tongue twister I got written in my notes here. He's got a deep arsenal of pass rushing moves, including swim moves, clubs, dips, spins, and his bull rush. He plays with relentless pursuit, good nose for the ball, pretty sturdy base, super productive in his final season with 64 pressures and 14 sacks on 342 reps. Now, he's not an elite athlete. He's not the longest guy in the world in terms of arm length. He doesn't have fantastic lateral quickness. There's going to be times where he is going to get washed down the line against the run. Balance isn't great. He's going to over pursue angles due to like overzealousness in the run almost. He had a 23% missed tackle rate. He needs to do a better job of setting the edge. And obviously, playing at Colorado State, you do have the concerns of like, how will he adapt to the league? You know, I'm not super worried about that. I think he will be a solid 3rd or 4th edge for your team. He's going to get to learn from Shaq Barrett. I do see a little bit of Shaq Barrett in his game, so I think that's pretty fitting. I like the Camara pick. I do. I really like this pick for them. Gives you a good rotation. And again, I understand panicking a little bit because Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb both coming off pretty big injuries.
I still don't like the Chop Robinson pick. I don't think Chop is the guy that you want replacing those guys, because I just don't see him as an every down pass rusher, an every down player. Whereas Mo Camara, you know he's going to be your third, maybe fourth edge rusher, like I said, and taking that in the 5th round is pretty good value. As we get into the 6th round, they made 3 picks, 2 of which I loved, 1 of which I have no opinion on. The first of which was Malik Washington, the wide receiver out of the University of Virginia. Now, ironically, out of these 2 wide receivers, he was the one I had rated lower. However, I will say, still love the pick. Had a mid 3rd round grade here on Washington. Ended up grading him out ahead of guys like Luke McCaffrey, Jacob Cowing, Jamari Thrash, Brendan Rice, guys of that nature. So with Washington, you're getting a good true slot. Explosive, high energy guy, hyperactive twitch. It's like he's got rockets on his shoes. He can utilize speed and explosiveness to take the top off the defense pretty well and stretch the field. He has good instincts and good feel for the position. He is able to explode out of his route breaks because he's a very fluid player, very fluid route runner. Able to bait defenders with his speed before stopping on a dime and turning. Can stack direction changes and head fakes on double moves. He makes himself available on scramble drills with pretty good zone awareness, which won't apply too much in Miami, obviously, but you never know, right? Could be handy. Pretty good hands catcher over the middle of the field, even through contact, especially given his size. He's got strong, soft hands that allow him to reel in contested targets, and he has the ability to track the ball pretty well and make plays after the catch, with the ability to break arm tackles and maintain speed, because even though he is short, he is stocky, which is a pretty good thing. Now, because he is 5'8", probably not playing him anywhere outside of the slot. His catch radius is lacking a bit due to his below average wingspan. Not going to work great against press. There are times where he's going to drift up field, which is not great. He does have a tendency to body catch, which, even though he has great hands, is an issue. And he turned 23 in January, so not the youngest guy in the world. But I do like this pick. I think this was one of the better receivers on the board at this time. Taking him here to be like a depth receiver is nice. I like having Malik Washington as like your 4. However, I'm giving this an A+ because of the value. The value is incredible. You're getting him a whole 3 rounds after I thought he should have went, and he was one of my favorite players in the class. However, when you have a crowded receiver room with Braxton Berrios, River Craycraft, Eric Ezukanma, and then, of course, Taj Washington, who we'll talk about in a moment, it's a little tough for me to be like, okay, this was what they needed. This is incredible, especially considering they signed Odell. Apparently, that was worked out before the draft. They were looking into Odell, so I don't know. I'm not going to fault them. It's the 6th round. I'm not going to be like, you definitely should have went this route, but, it is what it is. I will say, just because we're in the 6th round here, these are the last couple picks, I'm really sad that Miami didn't go after Leonard Taylor, who was the defensive tackle out of Miami, ironically, because he reminded me a lot of Christian Wilkins. I know he went undrafted, so the league wasn't nearly as high on him as I seem to be, and a couple other people seem to be, so I'm not going to, take this into account with their draft grade and slander Miami for it, but I do think he would have been a perfect fit. 6'3.5", 300 pounds, 33 and 7/8 arms, big dude, plays like Christian Wilkins, has the run defending chops to be pretty good, just needs to work on his pass rushing arsenal a bit. He would have been like a perfect fit for Miami at any point, and instead they end up walking away with what they walked away with, but I digress. Then here in the 6th round, they take a safety by the name of Patrick McMorris out of Cal. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not familiar with this guy's game. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say I know anything. I'm going to give them an NA just because of that. He's not somebody that was on my radar, not somebody I watched. 6 foot, 210 pounds. Looking in the 6th round, probably going to be a special teamer for them, which if he can be that or anything more, that's a win, right? In the 6th round, you're just looking for guys to make the roster. So, can't say anything too negative there. Then their final pick, they end up taking Taj Washington, the wide receiver out of USC. And Washington I had rated higher than Washington. I had an early 3rd round grade on him, had him above guys like Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk, Troy Franklin even. So I was a big fan of what Taj brought to the table. My Bears ended up drafting his quarterback, Caleb Williams. I watched a ton of his film. very familiar with what he brings to the table. If you remember Taylor Gabriel, who played for my Bears and the Falcons, reminds me a lot of him. You know, Turbo Taylor Gabriel, just a supercharged, fun, versatile slot. Very much like Washington, who was a very sudden athlete with and without the ball in his hand. So he's very quick, both like after the catch and before the ball gets thrown his way. It's a legit downfield threat that can stretch the defense, which was backed by his impressive testing. His lightning quick feet that allow him to snap in and out of his breaks. Great awareness when working against zone, will throttle down in soft spots to kind of make himself more accessible. Very fluid route runner who attacks leverage, varies his tempo, and hits defenders with jab steps at the top of his route to create separation. He's also very patient as a route runner. He's willing to throw in an extra step or two at the top of his route to bait defenders. I know normally when you hear guys talk about taking an extra step or two, that's a negative thing. I can promise you with Washington, this is a positive. It's just to trick defenders into thinking he's running a different route that he's actually running, and it works pretty well. The NFL level, we'll have to see. Everybody's smarter there. He has a pretty expansive route tree, which is going to require minimal development at the next level, which is a big deal. Very strong hands with a greatly improved drop rate. Went from 10% in 2022 to a singular drop in 2023, or 1.7%. Plays a lot bigger than his listed size and contested catch opportunities, reeling in 11 out of his 17 targets over the past 2 years in such situations. He tracks the deep ball well. He's capable of contorting his body to get underneath of it. Legit threat after the catch. He regularly makes plays as a ball carrier thanks to natural elusiveness and plus level creativity in the open field. Surprising good contact balance for his size, and he's probably going to play out of the slot. But at USC, he played slot wide receiver, he played boundary wide receiver, he played halfback, and even played a little H-back, a little pseudo fullback, you know, standing at 5'10", 174 pounds, which really blew me away. So like I said, probably going to be a slot player, almost certainly limited to a slot because of that below average size. He's going to struggle with press, which if you play him out of the slot, you won't have that issue. And his catch radius and his contested catch ability, despite his contested catch ability being pretty okay in college, is going to be limited at the next level where everyone is bigger, faster, and stronger. So I like the Washington pick. I really wish they wouldn't have signed Odell. Now, Odell makes a ton of sense for the Dolphins. I'm not going to like shit on them for that. That was a good signing. I just selfishly wish they wouldn't have signed him because Taj Washington would have been in their Odell role as like their middle of the field threat, and that would have been awesome. But, you know, that's just me being a little selfish. But I really do like this pick. I think him and the other Washington can both make this roster. If they don't, I think some team that picks them up on waivers or picks them up off the practice squad is going to get very, very lucky. Again, selfishly, I would love for my Bears to get a hold of Taj Washington, reunite him with his quarterback and Caleb Williams, but I digress. Overall, again, this draft is a mixed bag. I think the best thing I can do is just acknowledge it for what it is. I'm going to give it a C-. You skip out on interior defensive line. You skip out on interior offensive line. You spend your early picks on a tackle that I don't think is great, and also I don't think really fits what you needed. You also go out and draft a rotational edge rusher in the first round, which I don't love despite the talent. And then on day 3, you throw away a pick, almost, in my opinion, by taking Jalen Wright in the 4th. I do think he will, you know, make some sort of impact out of their backfield. Maybe throwing away a pick is a little too far with it, but there, you could have went so many other routes that would have been better for you right now and long term, and you just take another running back instead of waiting. And then a couple other nice picks there on day 3. So Miami's plan is certainly interesting. This is a team to me that seems like they're building for next year and only next year, which is tough because I don't think this team, as much as I hate to say it, because I love Mike McDaniel, I love what they got going on over there, I don't think this is a team that's contending next year. I don't think it's happening in a very competitive AFC and what's about to be a very competitive AFC East. I don't see Miami as a contender right now, so not doing a whole lot for the long term other than, I guess, Patrick Paul is the only move that's like not going to help you right now and will help you long term. I don't necessarily see the vision, but we shall see in due time.
Had a chance on the throwback. This was an ill-advised throw. What an unbelievable catch by Cole Kmet. And he cups it too. No movement when he hits the ground, tucked up against his shoulder. Wow.
Using that